Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to True. This is Bob Ost. It's our weekly community gathering, a program that we started out of desperation back in April when we wanted to do something that would be of use to the community while we're going through this pandemic. We created the weekly gatherings to lessen the sense of isolation, to give everybody a place to come and meet each other and hang out together. And I quickly decided that we also should take advantage of this time to actually bring you interesting people who have interesting things to say. And today, we're going to focus on uh, two not-for-profits that are beloved and well-known in sort of the basics of the foundation of our theater going in New York. We know the Irish Repertory. We know the New York Theater Company for years and years and years now. They've been with us and part of our community. So I have the general managers of both of those companies here with us today, and I'm going to talk to them a little bit about what it's been like dealing with COVID. Every week we deal with COVID in our gatherings because it's part of our lives now, and I think it's useful to hear how people are coping and how people are staying creative. So that's why we're here, and that's why they're here. And so I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about their backgrounds and a little bit about their companies. Ladies first.
Hi, hi, Lisa Fane, General Manager of the Irish Repertory Theatre. And my background is, as many people, I'm sure on this call, background in performing many years ago. And then I sort of moved over to support myself. I did administrative temping, and I worked in the legal department at Radio City Music Hall. And so I spent 15 years at Radio City Music Hall. Eventually, pretty soon after, got hired into production, and then worked my way up to be director of touring productions for the Radio City Christmas Spectacular starring the Rockettes.
I didn't know they toured. They tour?
Oh yeah, we had major touring. We had sit downs in many cities, and we had a big arena tour that unfortunately debuted in 2008 during the downturn, and it was a like $25 million tour with 25 trucks that went to arena to arena, and it was pretty spectacular. But we spent the next few years trying to keep it going and cutting cost where we could, but keep it spectacular. So that was and then eventually they decided to pull the plug on the big arena show that I was working on. And at that time, I sort of was like, you know what, enough of the entertainment. Really, theater is my first love. And so I went from this big, huge, like corporate situation where you had a finance department, you had a purchasing department, you had a legal department, HR department. And then I became a general manager for Women's Project Theater, which is now WP Theater. And I was all of those. So I felt like I had sort of enough experience to know what all these departments did. And then I just had to kind of figure out how to do them myself on a really much more micro level. And so that was really exciting and interesting. And then after about 3 years at Women's Project Theater, I was hired as general manager at the Irish Repertory Theatre, and which is a theater that I loved going to as a patron. I'm just always moved by the depth of work that Irish writers create, and I love the well-made play, and they just really, their level of excellence is just always impressed me, and so I'm very proud to be a part of what the Irish Rep does. Once I got hired into the Irish Rep, they said, oh, so in 3 weeks we're actually closing down our theater and we're moving for renovation. So my first year, 18 months there we were at a rented theater. I had to move the administrative offices, and then we did this big renovation, and then we came back. And in 2016, we've been producing back to back to back shows in our 2 theaters. We have a 148 seat theater and a black box, I guess about 70 maximum capacity theater.
Where are they located?
We're at 132 West 22nd in Chelsea.
My neighbor.
Yeah, yeah.
I live in Chelsea now.
Yeah, yeah. So you'll see us. You'll see us there. We've got, you know, we're actually doing have some activity at the theater now. We can talk a little bit more about that later.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about the COVID pivot,
Mm-hmm.
the new dance craze. Aaron Sims, welcome, and tell us a little bit about your background, and tell us a little bit about New York. I think, you know, we all know New York, but just give us a little history too.
Sure. Thanks, Bob, for having me on today, and nice to meet you all. My name is Aaron Sims, and I am the general manager of the York. I was kind of laughing as Lisa was going on, having all these departments at her disposal at Radio City, then all of a sudden you become all the departments when you manage a nonprofit. So that resonated with me very much. So I, like Lisa, started in performance in the Midwest, from Cincinnati, Ohio originally, and got my bachelor's in theater at Butler University. And from there went on to work at Milwaukee Rep for a year, and Wisconsin Shakespeare Festival, Human Race Theater Company, and jobbed around the Midwest and as an actor, and came to New York and started acting and directing and doing more. And then finding my way into the admin side, because I was at that rare kind of, or so told, rare, I could see the artistic side, also the big picture side, executive wise. And so that was interesting to me, and started directing more and started working more in fundraising and volunteering my time at small nonprofits and fundraising, and also production management, and would manage the international fashion shows, the Javits Center in Pier 94, 92, and 90, and the catering with Hammerstein Ballroom, the Steve Madden Viacom holiday parties and things like that. And developed a real knack for management, and ended up going back, kind of wanting more to that big picture idea. And acting was like a stepping stone to me to the evolution of my craft, I always say, because if you didn't know, or people didn't know, managers are creative people too. Mm-hmm. And so that was the evolution of my craft, to get my master's at Columbia and the theater management producing program, and been working on the commercial side for a good 3, 4, 5 years on Broadway and off Broadway, doing I did all at one time with Richard Kleiman. We did, like, I remember my first gig straight out of grad school, I was managing the Fiddler Revival, what was it, The Visit, and China Doll with Pacino was my first big, well-made show, not so well-made, and a few others all at the same time. And then going off to working with Eva Price and Maximum Entertainment, Cruel Intentions, and Small Mouth Sounds, Carefree, and a few others. At the same time, I also started my own nonprofit on the northern side of the island of Manhattan in Inwood, called Inwood Artworks. Then kind of transitioned more to the nonprofit side, because I figured out I had a commercial head but a nonprofit heart, and that's kind of how my management strategy has always been. And then found my way right through that to the York Theater, skill set for love and musical theater, and also the well-made musical, and going into the Little Scripts by the York. If you didn't know the York, it's in its 50th year. Also really appreciate their dedication to old gems from the past through its musicals and Mufti program. They do usually 3 a year, if not more, resurrecting, so to speak, neglected musicals that are possibly that need to be heard and seen. And believe it or not, they did it right before Encore started their series way back when. They started the exact same year without even knowing. Encore's obviously a turned to a lot different thing, but very much it's musicals done in plain clothes on stage with a very minimal choreography, book in hand, with accompaniment. So that is what the musicals and Muftis are. And then also we staged a dedication to new musicals. And I believe, other than a Moss musical theater, it's the only off-Broadway theater dedicated to producing musicals. So it's pretty awesome, and really proud of our work. Just our last two main stages were fantastic. We did a first ever world premiere of Maury Yeston's music called Anything Can Happen in the Theater. And we just finished a new rendition of Forbidden Broadway with Gerard Alessandrini. Right before the curtains came down on us in March, like everybody else, and we were just getting ready to premiere a new Irving Berlin musical called Cheek to Cheek, with Randy Skinner directing. So we have a lot on our plate ready to go, and so we'll have to do it all next year, unfortunately. But that's where we are, and we're keeping moving. So it's nice to meet you all.
Well, I'm going to keep the suspense going a little bit because I'm not going to turn to the COVID pivot yet. I actually, believe it or not, I want to ask you both a very basic question. Can you explain what the job of a general manager is in a not-for-profit theater company? Just state the obvious, but I think it's sometimes not as obvious as it seems to people.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, and the thing that I've learned about not-for-profits is that they can be put together in different ways. So sometimes you have people of the same titles that do different things, and sometimes you have a general manager who also has a managing director and has an associate general manager. So they do different things. But I can say at the Irish Rep, oh, there's my dog, Charlie.
Hello, Charlie.
He's waiting for his mama, Maggie, to come home. We don't have a managing director. We have a producing director, Kieran O'Reilly, and an artistic director, Charlotte Moore. And so as general manager, I do the role of a managing director in that I work with the board on the board finance audit committee. I have to put together cash flows and audits and all that, financial structure. I'm also sort of the legal person who deals with, Kieran does some negotiating, does a lot of negotiating and sort of putting the contracts together. I do a lot of logistics. I'm also the HR department and IT, and we have an outside IT company, but that all has to come through. So basically anything that needs to be managed, personnel, and such, it goes through the general manager, from down to insurance to, right now I'm trying to get licensing for some of our upcoming projects, but at the same time I have to make sure that the HVAC guy and gets into the building. And so
it's basically everything that the artistic director doesn't really want to do.
Well, I'm very lucky in that with Kieran being the producing director, there's not this huge separation between sort of artistic, and he gets both sides of it, which I feel very supported by, and we work together.
Does your job description change from Women's Project to Irish Rep, or was it pretty much the same? I know one of the things you said that I think is really important that I was hoping you would say is that different companies really put their business model together in different ways. The only thing that I would like to go on record as saying is that it's really helpful if there's an artistic director of the company to have somebody who's at least looking after the business side of it.
And I feel like it has to be, you can't really have, it's hard when you have an artistic director who is like, I want you to do everything I don't want to do, because that sets up this dynamic, which can be just painful, I think, on the managing director side. But when you have partners who know, okay, this is your strength, but they're still willing to engage, because the leadership of the company needs to have both the artistic and the managerial perspective to be successful. In terms of Women's Project, worked myself up to be the managing director at Women's Project. When I got hired over to Irish Rep, they had only had a business manager model. It was producing director and business manager. So when I came in, I said, can it be general manager? And so basically I've made it sort of a managing director position.
Okay. Aaron, would you like to echo some of that or add something to it?
I'll echo in saying, yes, I do all that too. And also Our structure is slightly different to York, just because, but not that different in a way. We're also, how bad, we're also accounts payable and accounts receivable when it comes to business manager as well, and finance director. So that's kind of, I would say that's kind of my role with that too, is that I'm the CFO, even though we have an artistic director, Jim Morgan, and an executive director, Evan Hale. The Jim is very much the schmoozer and relationship builder, and he's also a scenic designer, which is great, and also incredibly vast knowledge of musical theater.
He designs our scenery sometimes.
He designs our Charlotte have a great relationship, and so it's been really great to have someone who also sees different sides of the artistic process, understands it. He's definitely nothing to do with the business side so much, but has a great understanding as far as like the day-to-day operations. But as far as he understands it, but not day-to-day, and then he understands what has to be accomplished in order to be able to talk for licensing and things like that. And Evans's job, for the most part, is managing the staff. And it's strange that he's, so to speak, part-time at the York. He has a company up north, up in New Hampshire, and a Philharmonic in Gainesville he splits time with. So he's gone half the time, that leaves me to pick up whatever has to be picked up. So whether it's, so right now, it has to happen. Like I'm also kind of like the bridge. We just had a development director change, so I was handling development for the past 2 months, working with the grant writer, and I was on top of being the CFO essentially. Like Lisa said, I'm going through an audit right now with our accountant, and also making sure payroll's met on time. Not so much making deals at the moment, but because here we are in COVID, but also about seeing what's feasible and cash flow. I have cash flow till right now through September of 2021 already planned out. And it's just, you have to have the big picture and also pay attention to the small things. So you're dealing with the unions. I don't think we said that earlier, of course. And I also, one other hat I kind of wore because of my skill set is I kind of am a default kind of production manager for the shows, even though I hire one. We have a facilities manager that we kind of, he also is a stage manager, so he helps out quite a bit. But I kind of do the show's budgets and kind of see what crew is working, what crew don't we need, manage, liaise with PR. We have to, it's just a small company. I mean, our staff is about 9 people, so it's you're gonna kind of know everything. But the idea is to keep the ball in the air, and obviously the finance is rolling in the right direction.
I was actually waiting for somebody to mention budgets. I mean, you saved that for the end. The thing that I was curious about was, to what extent are you involved in structuring the budget so that, and this brings us to COVID. How involved were you in figuring out the spending, the cash flow, once we had a turnaround that was basically us going into the unknown? How do you do that? How do you figure out how to make projections?
Are we ready to do the COVID pivot?
Yeah, we're on the COVID.
Now?
We're on the COVID pivot now. Yeah.
Okay. So, every institution sort of has different models in terms of how they budget and how they produce. Some companies sort of do 3 shows a year and they do them all together, so they've got time where they're off. They just have a different sort of production year. The Irish Rep is unique in that we produce back to back to back to back to back to back. We don't have seasons. And sometimes, this is when we were producing live theater, sometimes we didn't know even a few months from now what we would be doing. So we were really built, that's how we're built. We also make 60% of our income from our box office. And so the more we produce, the more we were able to kind of keep the train rolling. And so the train was rolling. And then, and in March, we actually had 2 shows on our stages, on a main stage and a studio. And we had Incantata and Lady G. And then we had Eugene O'Neill's Touch of the Poet, which was all rehearsed and just about to get on stage. And so we had to shut down. I had we had one more performance. So I'm like, hey gang, this is your last show. So we had to play our last show for Lady G and for Incantata. And then we tried to keep rehearsals going for Touch of the Poet because we were so close. We were 3 days away from getting on stage with that. So we continued that a few days, but it just seemed like it wasn't going to work. We couldn't get people to load in our set. You know, things were just starting to kind of go downhill. So that's when Anna started. She and I and Kieran were at the theater, and basically in a few days had to figure out how to work remote, how to get everybody working remotely, when we really had never even conceived of that possibility. Getting, being able to talk about accounts payable, how do we keep getting people paid when we can't write checks and put them in, because we're all in different. So we had to do a lot of infrastructure decision making pretty quickly. And then because we were sort of built to keep going, we had, well, at the same time while we're working on the infrastructure, our director of marketing, Frances Howarth, and director of marketing and digital strategy now, pivoted to doing online work that was kind of donated by all of our great artists in the Irish community. And it was called The Show Must Go Online. And so that sort of kept our community alive and engaged while we had a chance to set up the infrastructure to kind of keep going. And then sort of on a financial, so the PPP loan helped. So that was part of the financial infrastructure. It's like, okay, all of a sudden figuring out, I've never heard of the SBA before. And then all of a sudden we're doing loans with them. So we got the PPP loan, which was really, I think, did what it was supposed to do. It kept us committed to keeping our staff, all of our staff, for that 8 weeks. And in that 8 weeks, we figured out how to start producing and start being a digital production company. And we were able to keep everybody on. And now somebody mentioned Molly Sweeney was our first show with Geraldine Hughes and Karen O'Reilly and Paul O'Brien. And originally we were talking about it being a reading, but it was one of the characters is blind. So we couldn't have her in the reading, reading from a script. It just wouldn't work. And so I think pretty early on, we decided to just make it a production. And that's the model that we have followed, that we continue to follow.
I also was saved by PPP, by the payroll protection program, and yes, is exactly the same thing. The 8 weeks that we had our payroll covered by PPP enabled True to rethink everything we're doing and find ways of continuing to go. And we seem to be doing fine during this terrible time. I hate to say it, but we are. We just are. Aaron, how about the York? What happened with you guys on March 15th?
Yeah, we closed up on the 12th. We had to leave that Thursday actually beforehand at our building, and I mean, we had an education program loading in. We had a rental, which is with our Marymount Manhattan College coming in. They were going to do Grease. That was about ready to. They were poor. I felt bad that all those poor kids never got to do a show. They were in rehearsals for 4 weeks and never got to do it. Which Jim designed, we all designed. It was like almost like a co-production with these kids, and we had an ongoing relationship. So that was a bit of a heartbreaker. And what can you do? We weren't in production yet for our main stage because we were just about to go into rehearsals the very next week. But we
I'm
had
sorry, with what?
we were not in production yet for our main stage. We were about to go to rehearsals the very next week for Chica
Oh,
So that was a blessing in disguise to have it cast and ready to go and designs ready and things like that without spending tons of money on it already. But it was a bit of, March was a bit of a, like an earthquake rumbling under your feet for a month and not knowing when's it going to settle. And the PPP loans, the EIDL loans, they're fine as a salve. They're not a long-term solution by any means, nor are they meant to be. But I agree with Lisa. They provided what we needed to figure out what we're doing, and we are still here, which is the main thing. And I confidently say to you that we'll be here through next September. So I mean, it's like
you have the cash flow.
Because I made the budget, and I told the board this is what we're going to do. I just said this is the way we're going to do, and we're going to do it this way. And if you don't like it, we can close. It sounds good to me, and they like the plan, and the plan works so far. And I think that's the major takeaway to put together COVID and the budget. What you asked, Bob, is that the budget is ever changing, right? It's a fluid document that will always keep moving, but you have to have a roadmap. You have to have a blueprint to start from and to go with. And yes, you can pivot. Yes, you can. Things you come up, opportunities come up. You'll spend money on things you didn't know you would spend money on. But perhaps, as Lisa said, you figure out what's working for you in this age, and you're going to be around, because at the end of the day, we're in the live theater business. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is to get to be in a live theater business again. It's great to have a digital wing, so to speak, particularly now until we can all be together, as they keep saying in the room. But for the next foreseeable future, this is the game is about beating time and being around. And I think is essentially the goal for us. And I think that plan so far, given the loans and all that, will definitely help us. But we definitely, as much as why probably the Met closed up this past week for a year, they know the earned income, they're very dependent on earned income. And no matter how big or small you are, you're earned to, what do you call it? Giving, contributed giving ratio speaks wonders. So everybody's in a different, there's no right model. Everyone's in a different way to go about it. But you have to get to the other side, and that's, I think.
And I do feel like not smaller nonprofits like our two companies are actually kind of in a sweet spot right now.
Yes.
In terms of, I really kind of feel like we have the I'd put my money on us.
Yeah,
in being able to get through this, and even before, and come back even before Broadway or some of these biggers, because I feel like the balance between contributed income. We also, I just have to say, had an amazingly supportive board, and we had our board chair was like, "This is going to last a long time. This is going to last a year." When people were like, "Oh, it's going to come back next month," she's like, "No, we have to plan for a year," and she's been saying that from the beginning, and that really helped. And at the same time, the board came up with the giving, even though our gala, which usually made us $400,000, got canceled. Right. They still made up some of that giving. So we're really, I think, built, our type level of company is really built to last.
Yeah, I think just say that too. I think it's also important to realize what you can and cannot do throughout the next year too. And like, sacrifices do have to be made in the budget. So, I cut $700,000 out of our budget for next year.
That's what I was going to ask you. How did you, first of all, I can't imagine how you would project into September of 2021 when we're entering a period of total unknowns. So what?
You have to. Bob, the way out is through.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a good point. The way out is through. This is the way out is through. It really is. We're gonna have to go through COVID. We're not waiting for it to.
Yeah, and we'll be back way before Broadway. Way might be a few months, but still, it'll be before Broadway. And I do feel I agree with you, Lisa. Like we're in the driver's seat as far as, because our house. I didn't mention our house is 161 seats. we only have one space. They have two, but
Well, both of your companies have real estate, so essentially you have
it's
some
also
fixed.
very unusual.
What? I'm sorry.
Very unusual for an off-Broadway theater to have real estate these days.
Yeah, but I mean, and both of you do so. You have some fixed expenses that you have to cope with. You said you cut $700,000 from the budget. Where? What?
I'm
How did
wondering
you?
the same thing.
How did you do it?
Well, I got rid of some people. No, actually, and I'll say this too. Everybody's on. I've kept everybody on salary. We've never cut. I never furloughed a single person from March. I want people to make sure that we're talking. The focus is on nonprofit here, mentioned. So I want to make sure people understand that, you going into this, the idea, you have to be good to people too, because the end you can't just say, oh, by the way, bye, and we'll call you when we need you. My big thing was keep people on health insurance, particularly in figuring this whole thing out when the crazy PPP stuff was happening. And Lisa and I talked on the phone a couple times in our different groups and things like that. We had a chain email for a while about, the PPP regulations kept changing almost daily, and figure things out. But we never furloughed anybody. We never, we kept people on health insurance because that was the name of the game. Keep people healthy, keep people employed. And while we figured this out, and I think that needs to be said, is that's not all about money, so to speak. It's about giving yourself time to figure out logistics so you can make a budget and create, saying, okay, if this is going to happen through January 1st, what can we do? At what little cost? What can generate income for us? Like our gala was wiped out too in November. We have our big Oscar Hammerstein Award was wiped out too, and so that was a big deal. And
have you thought about doing a virtual gala?
No, we're not doing a virtual gala because we don't feel that serves us well in our model. What we do, we may do one in the future, but right now it's all about the programming itself. And we're gonna have a virtual cabaret series coming up. Hope we're not jumping the gun talking about programming now, but we're gonna have a virtual cabaret series coming up, and there's gonna be a bit of I won't say it's like the Oscar Hammerstein Awards where it's ginormous, but it's gonna be a gala fundraiser in December that'll serve as a fundraiser. It won't be, this huge thing, but it'll be very nice and it'll be well done. And so we're going to work towards that. We never had one in December, particularly late December, but I think, you have to pivot, and to answer your question, Bob, is that you see where you're going to be and you commit to where you think you can be and what you can do. And and I'll say this, and then Lisa, feel free to chime in. The budget document isn't always the best document. Your cash flow document is your best document.
Well, it's funny you should say it, because we actually don't have a budget. We have, because of how we produce.
Yeah, no, there you go.
So I really only have a cash flow that serves as a budget, because that's what it's about.
Because our model is very similar to Irish Rep. That's why Jim and Charlotte get along so well. You kind of we may not know what we're doing in, right now, I have an idea what our main stage could be in June, but I don't know. We're thinking that's where we can fit something given how I planned out next year with Jim and Evans and the rest of the gang, the staff. But that could change. We're in theater, if anything's an opportunistic business. And if something changes, who knows, a second/third wave of COVID, you're gonna have to change again. So, but you have to have a blueprint. You have to have something to go off of. And if your cash flow documents that blueprint, that's totally fine. That's a budget in its own way. It's just spread out over 52 weeks, and or however long you want to do it, and break it down. But my budget that big budget is spread over 52 weeks from what I'm going to do, because that's the way I think. And every general manager is different, and every nonprofit is going to be different in how they're going to react to what they're doing. So,
have your expenses decreased during COVID to any significant? Because everything that you're talking about sounds like they're fixed expenses. There's things that haven't changed.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I would love to be able to find 700,000, because you know, we were asked, okay, cut your expenses. But the truth is, back to the staffing question, I think what some companies might have done is, like, right after the PPP, cut everybody. You had to make a decision. Are we going to hunker down and wait for this to pass? But you always have to right size your staff. And we made sure that all of our staff members are working full time. So in that 8 weeks, we got to figure out, like, our house manager. Okay, we don't have patrons for this house manager to greet. Well, she happens to be a developing video editor. So now she's doing all of our video editing for our performances. And then, so we've been pivoting our staff so that we can actually, you know, that they're actually adding value and keeping us going. So we, you know, haven't cut salaries at all because
Right.
everybody is working so hard.
Yeah. True.
So it's a balance. You don't want to have so much staff that you can't actually support it with income. And I guess we can talk a little bit more about income.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
But I think you have to cut vendors too. It's like, for instance, like, we're not paying for our Xerox machine now because we're not in the building. We're not using our Xerox, so therefore, I've talked to. I mean, you can't just say I'm not paying. You got to talk to your vendors.
I have talked to my vendor. I'm paying for my. I'd like to talk to you because I am paying for my Xerox machine. Yeah.
I drive a hard bargain. It's called, do you want us to still keep paying in January when we come back? Or you can take the machine out. We're like, I think we can keep paying in January. That's great. We'll see you then.
Okay, we'll talk.
You know what I mean?
We'll
that's just my approach to just if it helps you or not. Because, I mean, to be fair, I'm not trying to be a hard ass about anything. If anything, it's coming from a human point of view, just saying, listen, we love you. We like your Xerox machine. We want to keep using the Xerox machine. We actually can't use your Xerox machine. And you know why we can't use your Xerox machine. So, and they go, we understand.
So you probably cut your internet service and your utilities in your space.
Now, see, we haven't saved on that at all because we're actually remoting into we've kept our network, you know, our network has its integrity. We're remoting into our computers.
Yeah, so are we.
The theater.
Okay.
So are we.
So we've cut cleaning, you know, for now. I'm sure that's going to come back. We're going to have to spend a lot of you know, there's not we were very lean to begin with. I think many of us are.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I agree. And that's why we're going to be the first to come back.
That's also why the rest of us are very concerned about you, because you haven't been able to cut your expenses. And what are you doing in terms of your income? You had mentioned, I think Aaron mentioned that I think it was Lisa, that your board is being very generous and that you have individual contributions that are helping to keep you going. What else have you created that is generating any kind of income?
Well, we've had one of the things is we actually, some of what we benefited from were decisions that were made in the past. And one of them was to build a reserve. We had maybe 4 years ago, a really popular show and it built up some reserves. So we structured those reserves and we still have them. And we also had business interruption insurance on our theatrical package, not just on our property package. And the property is the one that has that COVID, it has a virus exception. So people are having trouble getting paid on that. But we had this business interruption, which should totally apply in this situation. And so I've been spending 5 months fighting with that. But they did, early on, they basically said this is a covered expense. So we're like, great. And then they sent in forensic accountants to look over all of our books and then finally told us, you know what, instead of $1 million, you only lost 200,000, but you got the PPP loan, so you haven't really lost anything.
Oh, man.
Ouch.
So I called my friend who's an assembly member and who's actually sponsored the bill to require payment for business interruption. And he told me, oh, you know what? I'm having a press conference on Sunday. Would you like to join? And I said, well, let me just check. So I emailed my insurance company. I'm like, you know, I'm wondering wondering if I should participate in this press conference, but I just wanted to know what the status is of our claim. Next day, they sent us the money.
Good for you.
$120,000.
Yeah, that a girl.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Wait. Yeah. 102. No, 100. Yeah, $1,200. And so that was a chunk of income. Then we had the PPP. We also had a few funders who Gilman's been very great. They gave us a little extra. We've had some front-loaded funders who were like, we were going to give you this later. Let's give it to you now. So that all being said, in terms of, we don't technically have any earned income because we do suggested donations for our performances.
Yeah.
So it falls under an individual donation line. And we prefer that model, and we're very surprised, and we feel that that's actually the best model because we can offer our shows to people who can't afford it, which is many people nowadays with artists being out of work. But also people are being very generous, and we have a very, just a great patrons. People love us and are very generous. So between that plus the first show we did, Molly Sweeney, we actually got significant tens of thousands of dollars without spending very much at all.
That's
so
great.
I'd say that in terms of where we are now and how I've done my cash flow is we are continuing on. It's not completely sustainable. So at the end of the next fiscal year, we're spending down our reserves.
Right.
But our goal is to be so robust in the digital space that we can decide when it's right for us to go back and start spending money on sets and costumes, and knowing that our audience will come back, physically. One more thing is, I think that for us to be able to do that, we have to get approval to be able to continue to simulcast and record our work for at least the next few years.
I agree with you. And for those of you who don't know, Lisa and I are both part of the Off-Broadway League, and there's ongoing negotiations. And I'll just leave it at that to be able to do that. So we'll update you when we know more.
And I'm trying to make it clear, it's not like a cherry on top. It's actually going to be part of our decision making about when we go back to the theater to do live theater.
So
we can supplement our income and widen our audiences.
So the thing that the obvious, to state the obvious, your production costs have been eliminated right now. So you don't have as much.
I wouldn't say completely. We pay actors and designers and videographers.
Yeah, I mean, we're both. If you haven't, just go to our websites, or go to our Facebook pages, or I would say the social media is probably the best place to go for Irish Rep and York Theater, because you can see that's how all the content's getting out. The YouTube channel, it's all getting out there through that. Irish Rep has a great YouTube channel. York has a great YouTube channel, and you'll see all the content we're doing. We're spending money to create this content. People think because you do things on social media, it's free. No, it costs money to create things, particularly editing and like you said.
We've also had distribution. We've had to invest in Restream and a few other sort of distribution channels, and to learn how to do that.
But I'm not sure if it's comparable to the production costs for a live performance.
Not at all. No, if that were the case, then my cash flow would look very, very different.
Yeah. So that a lot of people in the chat, including myself, were just thinking this is like magic. How are you making this happen? But there are a couple things that are specific. Like, you would normally have a season where you would spend $500,000, whatever it would be. So you're not spending that. You're probably spending something that's a significant amount of money, but you don't need income to cover a $500,000 season. You need income to cover a proportionately smaller amount cost for your season. Even though I know there's boy do I know there are lots of costs involved in moving virtually, all sorts of things that pop up that you don't really think about.
And the trick is making sure, I'm figuring out how to land the plane, and making sure that we don't have these stops and start. You don't invest a lot of money in physical assets, about to have a show and then get shut down again. So
Yeah.
just finding the right time to come back and start investing in a physical, live, in-person show. It's an art
So
that none of us are trained for.
right, we're all learning as we go along with all of this. A couple specific questions about your virtual presentation. Now, was it only Molly Sweeney? Have you done anything besides Molly Sweeney virtually?
Oh yes, we've had a whole summer season and a fall season.
Okay.
And so Molly Sweeney started out, and we've also developed technically. We've got a couple of different ways that we do it.
Let me ask you that, because what platform have you used? Have you done anything that's been a complete live streaming, or has everything been recorded and edited in post-production?
We've done a few events here and there that are live, but primarily what we do is, so Molly Sweeney none of our stuff has been produced on Zoom. It's been recorded on actors' cell phones for the most part, and directed on Zoom. So we direct it, it gets recorded, and then we edit together. And then somebody mentioned about using Zoom backgrounds, but what we've done is that we send green screens to our actors along with a whole lighting setup. And then we have our scenic designer put the set. So we did a production called The Weir, Connor McPherson, where they're all in the same pub. And so we all had to deal with angles and stuff like that. So it was sort of, we developed that style of doing things. And then we also did some live in person. We did Love Noel with KT Sullivan and Steve Ross, where they were at the Players. And that was done just with the two of them in the same room. When we're following the New York State media production guidelines for COVID safety and such.
Aaron, how about you in New York? What has your virtual content been?
Every week we do, or every other week we did mostly. We went nonstop from like March till August, and like every week doing these cast reunion shows called Show and Tells, where we bring back a cast from a previous show and reunite them and talk about what we're doing. And it was fun, but it was breakneck speed. So we're doing this about every 2 weeks now, throughout the fall, winter, through essentially through December. I believe we have Hallelujah Baby coming up next Tuesday or Monday, so tune in for that. It'd be good. We also are doing our educational program, the MTTP program, is really big for us, and so we've been highlighting showcases of content, which is great because you can't do an archival. I'll just say that out loud if you didn't know that, unless you want to cap the nose for it. So we're doing full or showcases for our musical theater training program for the past couple of years, which has been great, about once or twice a month. And we're also doing things that are kind of fun and inventive, like York Trivia. And so we'll have like a musical theater trivia night. We're gonna do a Halloween edition at the end of this month, or sorry, October. Feels like October already. Mm-hmm. And we did a Taste of York, where we kind of got people who submitted recipes from our favorite designers and directors, and we kind of did like a Taste of York night where we talked about some of our favorite dishes and how to cook them. And so it was kind of creative. And we had a members night this Monday night. We did a members night just for our members, and the staff talked about that ourselves, about what we're doing, how we're surviving, and what we have coming up. And so I feel like our engagements were very personal but professional, and we really focused on engaging with our individual stakeholders. And I don't mean that by donors, I mean people who just love New York. Yes, we'll get new audiences by doing things virtually, and we've seen a lot of uptick in small, like I love seeing $10, $20 donations every morning. I think it's the best thing ever, because these are new people who we've never seen before. When I entered in QuickBooks, I'm like, awesome, new vendor or new customer. And it's wonderful to see that we're actually building audiences through the virtual things. So I feel like we're creating that base, and we'll have this cabaret series. Like I said, the big one will be November through December. Big names will be coming out for that, and our board members behind it too. And which is really great is that a board member guaranteed the program, so which is even better. So we're not good. So whatever money comes in, wherever that budget for that program came in, we're going to meet it because the board member said, whatever it costs, I'll match it. And I'm like, I love you. You're my favorite person in the world.
Mhm.
And so not only does it give us great content, it gives us, a net if anything should happen, God forbid. But nothing, honestly, nothing forbearing is going to happen. And we're doing things similarly. So we're pre-recording some things. We're doing some things live via Zoom. But we're staying flexible. We're experiencing with as far as like outlets, and you said restream. We're going to StreamYard a little bit.
Okay, StreamYard.
That's something new that we're playing with. But Zoom has been fine for whatever. It just, as you all know, you really can't do anything musical with it. It's just kind of impossible. But that's where you kind of tape things, and you said we have a great editor, videographer who we've been with us for many years, who's been helping us, and it's just been really great about putting a game plan together. And I can't believe I'm saying this. Here it is, like September. And I feel really confident at the end of the year. Like I really feel like our fall program through December is like, I couldn't be more relaxed, and which just sounds absolutely crazy to say. But that comes, I think, with anything else. Like you're setting proper expectations, and don't get me wrong, things come up nearly daily. But get my fire extinguisher back there. But
I just want to go into
and I agree with Lisa though. The unions actually, it'd be very interesting to see how things go down with the unions, if there'll be a new union come out of this, if there's going to be a lot of non-union productions popping up. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen in the next year.
Am I correct, by the way, guys? Am I correct in saying that Equity has relinquished the domain of new media to SAG-AFTRA, or are you still?
I'll be very.
That's what we were told.
Yes, it depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
Basically, we've been doing our productions under a SAG new media agreement, and SAG claims, and I have to agree, that they have jurisdiction in the space where you're creating new works for new media, for digital distribution. Equity, however, is going around, has a sort of new media, has a virtual contract that they've been telling people about. However, they have not, SAG has not ceded jurisdiction to Equity. So we have intentionally stayed away from we are staying in the SAG space because we don't want to get caught in the crossfire between two unions, which are not settling this issue.
Well, I think you're okay because Martin Platt has done his due diligence for us. And
I know Martin and I, yeah.
Yeah, he's had the conversations, and pretty much Equity has agreed that if this is a piece that you're creating for new media and it's never been on the stage, that's why you can't do archive pieces. It was those things appeared live once before. If it's once.
Well, no. Let's be clear. Archive has to do with an actual filming of a previous. We're doing new versions.
No.
We're creating new work based on shows we've done before.
That's right.
But they are new works, and they are
the actual. Yeah. You can do a revival of something saying Molly Sweeney's been written many years ago by Brian Field. But guess what? Their production of Molly Sweeney was a new production of Molly Sweeney.
So this is a film. And so Equity does not have jurisdiction, even if the show has been done on our stage before.
Well, Molly Sweeney is actually an easy transition to virtual because it's three monologues, isn't it?
Yes.
As I recall. So they can all be done isolated, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and that brings up a point.
I actually did the advertising for the original Molly Sweeney at Roundabout.
And it was actually 2 of the 3 cast members. One of them was our producing director.
Really?
But I think my advice, I think what's really helped us is our artistic staff has chosen works which work either thematically or dramatically well in this space. And in fact, I believe they've been enhanced by the intimacy of this medium. And I think to really look at this as a new medium I think is a good way to look at it, as opposed to sort of like a stopgap. There's really some things that can be communicated in this way even more powerfully than theater.
No, Aaron, I think you had to leave at
I
6.
do, unfortunately, yeah.
So you have to sign off now.
I do. Or one last question, but I do have to get going, unfortunately.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to know if anybody from the room wanted to ask Aaron something before he has to leave. You can do a virtual hand raise. If you have your participation window open, you can see a virtual hand raise in the bottom left-hand corner, or you could just put your audio on and ask a question, or you could do it in chat. We have a quiet group today.
Mm-hmm.
So
we talked a lot, so what else is there to talk about, really?
What else is there? There's nothing.
I could go on, but yeah.
We solved the world's problems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to thank Aaron Sims for being with us, and Lisa Fane for being with us today. And thank you for your generous sharing of information. Some of it may be a little more detailed than you might have wanted to go into, but I'm very grateful. We have basically an audience of people that are, for the most part, we're all three theater professionals here, and many of us have a deep interest in producing.
Yeah, that's what's so great, to talk about people who care about this,
that's
stuff rather than boring people.
Yeah.
We care, at least I care, I know Lisa does too, about you all. Like, this is, we need to keep the torch moving in the right direction. So thanks to everybody for their time,
Mm-hmm.
and really appreciate it. And you can reach me at the York if you need any further questions about anything.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you all. Bye, Lisa. Good to see you.
Bye, Aaron. We'll talk about that Xerox machine.
Take it easy. But thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Thank you. This is the time that I always do my weekly spiel. Basically, we are happy to do this and have you all here for free, and we do this for free because we want to serve the community, and I think we're doing a good job. I'm very happy with how things have been going over the past, well, since April 17th. We've done, I think this must be our 24th consecutive Friday meeting. If you want to support us, we won't stop you. So please consider giving a donation or joining as a member. Membership for True is $95 a year. Donations can be made on our website. We now have a new URL that you can use, which is, oh boy, Joe Nelms. It's trudonate.com. So you can go to trudonate.com now,